Okay, let's have a look at an upper intermediate lesson plan. So the first stage, the introduction stage in this lesson, is to put the class into groups. Now this could be pairs or threes or fours. This will very much depend on how many students you've got in your group and how well they work with each other. You need to give all of the students the same strip of pictures and tell the students they need to discuss together the pictures in their groups and try and come up with a title. So first of all, they'll look at the pictures individually, and there's 3 pictures in total. So the first picture is showing the English flag, so you're hoping they're going to elicit something along the lines of England or English. The second picture is showing a globe, so they would come up with something like world, global, earth. And the last picture is a picture showing many different languages, so hopefully they'll elicit something like language. Now the reason for putting the students into groups in the introduction stage is because this encourages student-to-student interaction. If you just got the students to give you words and you as the teacher stood at the front of the class, this would very much be teacher-student. So we want our students to communicate as much as possible, and one of the best ways to do this is put them into groups so they can talk with each other. From here you can do feedback and look at all the different ideas from the groups. Put some of the notes on the board. It's also a good time to look at synonyms and how the different ideas from different groups may vary. And also put up the title that you're wanting them to elicit, and hopefully a group has it, which is English as a Global Language. From there, you'd move on to activity 1. You need to explain to the students that they must stay in their groups and use the title that was elicited in the introduction stage, which, remind them again, was English as a Global Language. You need to ask them to start to think about the topic English as a Global Language and ask them to predict 10 words they think are related to this title. Give them some time in groups to work through and discuss, and again, similar to the introduction stage, this encourages the student-to-student interaction. Once they have their 10 words, then this is time for more teacher-student, student-teacher, when you can all discuss and feedback together all of the words that they've come up with. So some words, some examples that they could come up with for English as a Global Language could be world, international, worldwide, important, key, main, dominant, essential. So go through and also do some concept checking here, because each group will come up with different words. So you need to make sure that all of the students understand all of the words that the others are coming up with. So for example, if one of the words is influential, you could ask them a question as in, who is the most influential person in your life? Who's the most influential famous person that you've come across? From here you'd move on to activity 3, and this is discussing the title English as a Global Language. So there are some key items here for the whole class to discuss together as a group. So some examples could be, is English a global language? Now the answers that you will get will very much depend on the nationalities for the group. Should English be a global language? So maybe if you've got some other nationalities in the group like Chinese or maybe South American or Spanish, they might argue that their languages could be better because they're spoken in more places, they have a bigger population and so forth. Another question could be, is there a better global language that should be used? And will English remain the global language in 20 years' time? So you're also looking at some future things here, so it's a good way to introduce some more grammar structures. Once they've done that, we're leading on to the main activity, which is a dictogloss. So a dictogloss is when the teacher will take a passage and either write it themselves or maybe edit something from a newspaper or some source, and they read it at normal pace and put the students into groups and then read the text again and then read it a third time. The students, the task that they have to do is to reconstruct the text as best they can to the original text that the teacher read out. When they do this, after they've listened to the teacher reading the text, they're working together in groups. So again, you've got strong student-to-student interaction here. They've done the listening part because they've had to listen. They've done some note taking because they've had to make some notes. And then they have to reformulate what was read. So they're doing some writing, they're looking at grammar, sentence construction, also spelling, because they listen to lots of words. So this is a good way for the teacher to check the spelling of the students. Once you've gone through all of this, then you need to go through all the different answers that the students have got. Sometimes it's a good idea to give each student a piece of projector paper and a pen, so that actually you can show all of the group's efforts on the projector at the end and see how they differ from each other. This is also an excellent way to go through and check for grammar and spelling, and it also means that you could almost, as the teacher, stand with the pen and go through their example of the dictogloss and stop where there's a mistake and get them to come up with the mistake and correct it themselves, rather than you as the teacher just going through and correcting everything for them. So the dictogloss is: the English language can be traced back to the mixture of Anglo-Saxon dialects that came to these shores 1500 years ago. Since then, it has been played with, altered and transported around the world in many different forms. The language we now recognise as English first became the dominant language in Great Britain during the Middle Ages and in Ireland during the 18th and 19th centuries. From there, it has been exported into the mouths of colonists and settlers to all four corners of the globe. International English, World English or Global English are terms used to describe a type of general English that has, over the course of the 20th century, become a worldwide means of communication. So the idea of dictogloss is they're putting something together, reformulating it as best they can. They have to listen out for the key words, put the sentences together, think about punctuation and think about spelling. Once you've done the feedback from the dictogloss, look specifically at any grammar, spelling or pronunciation mistakes that they've made and use those as a focal point for some extra language practice. Once you've done that, a good filler or way to end the lesson would be to give each student a strip of paper that's got the hashtag symbol on it. Ask them to write their opinion of English as a global language. So some examples could be English rules, I love London, long live the Queen, fish and chips, cup of tea. And it just encourages them to write some very typical things about England, or perhaps stereotypes using the hashtag symbol that's used quite a lot in social media. It's always good to have extension activities up your sleeve, just in case your class finishes too early, or just as an extension task if they're enjoying what they're doing and you could almost extend it to the next lesson. So 2 examples here that are in the lesson plan could be to ask the students to create their own piece of writing entitled English as a Global Language, or ask the students to research their own native language and give a mini micro presentation to the class about it. This would encourage some speaking skills and some writing skills.